I am a gynecologist. I got bored, so feel free to ask any inappropriate questions about my profession. Has it ever happened that you accidentally brought a patient to orgasm? Not yet, but I know some tricks, so I could. Damn ethics rules, they always ruin everything. Have you ever had to remove stuck objects from a patient? Plenty of times, mostly various balls get stuck. Pool/billiard balls are quite common. They are just the perfect size to get stuck. I've also encountered golf balls. Are there any misconceptions about female anatomy that you would like to dispel? The only thing that comes to mind is the G-spot. The misconception is that everyone thinks it's a distinct anatomical structure. I'm sure there are other misconceptions, but I can't think of any right now. Do you prefer a patient to shave everything down there before an appointment or not? I've always wondered if doctors judge us for having pubic hair. Doctors don't judge you, at least most of the time. Personally, I don't care at all, except when you have folliculitis and I ask you not to shave, but you keep doing it, then it can be a bit frustrating. How often do women's labia protrude outward? How often are they more internal? I've only been with one girl whose labia protruded. Does that mean they are less common? Whether they protrude or not doesn't matter. Anatomically, there is no issue. But if they cause discomfort, such as rubbing against clothing or general discomfort, labiaplasty can be done. After so many years in gynecology, has your sex drive decreased? No. My little child affects it much more than my job. Plus, I'm not that old yet. Best experience? Worst experience? Best experience. A 17-year-old girl was brought to me after a botched abortion, and there was blood everywhere. Not only did I save her life, but I also avoided having to perform a hysterectomy. Worst experience, any full-term birth where the baby is stillborn. What happens when a stillborn baby is delivered? Do you quickly express condolences and then leave to do paperwork? Or do you spend some time with the mother? You need to spend a lot of time with them. They need you much more than parents who have a live baby. Those parents don't care about you 15 seconds after the birth is over. Are you required to provide any psychological support even though you're trained as a gynecologist and not a psychologist? Or do you stay with them because such cases usually involve physical complications? Both. I have to see the delivery through from start to finish. What's the grossest thing you have to deal with? Patients who weigh around 400 pounds. Also, the creepy stuff from gynecological oncology that defies description. Cancer can look pretty nasty sometimes. As for exotic cases, I've seen a couple of dermoid cysts filled with hair and jelly-like fluid. Once, I delivered triplets, one of whom died at 15 weeks of pregnancy. I wasn't ready for that answer. Looks like I won't be getting any sleep tonight. If you decide to become an OBGYN, you'll sleep like a baby. We have so much work and so many calls in the middle of the night that not sleeping whenever you get a chance is impossible. I understand you're a woman, but I think many people want to know. Have you had patients who were more happy to see you than others? Of course, I'm quite the hottie, but seriously, not really. I've had patients who prefer women, but, you know, in a hospital setting, when you're anxious and all, it's hard to get aroused. How often do patients not shave down there? Does it make you uncomfortable? It all depends on the time of year, age, geography, and social status. Often, I just don't pay attention to such things. We get tired, you know? We have other priorities. Unless the hair interferes with our work. Being a woman myself, I understand everything. Hair doesn't bother me, as long as, again, it's not getting in the way. And only in those moments do I think, seriously? That long? So who shaves more often? Urban dwellers. Strippers. Girls aged 16 to 22. In the summer, everyone shaves more often. I'm 25, and my libido is at 0. I don't even desire my handsome neighbor. Any thoughts on what's going on with me? If there are no issues found during examination, if blood tests are normal, etc., then for solving such problems, I usually involve an experienced psychologist. Typically, the root cause lies either in depression, anxiety, or both. It can also happen that problems arise from medications that are combating depression and anxiety. Unfortunately, checking your libido separately is very difficult, as there are very few laboratories that do that. But I can tell you that if you don't have any other symptoms, the problem is unlikely to be hormone-related. How many people, upon learning about your profession, joke about vaginas? Answer in percentages. Less than 1%. But when I hang out with other doctors somewhere, stories about vaginas come up all the time. I'm 27, and I'm still considering going into medicine. The problem is that I'll only finish my education by the time I'm 38. Do you think it's worth it? I don't know. Everyone's experience is different. I started medical school at 22. Most likely, you're in for a long and difficult journey. It's not worth it to pursue this just for the money, because any doctor will tell you there are plenty of other, easier ways to earn a living. I enjoy being a doctor, but it's not for everyone. Sorry for such a blunt answer, but that's how it is. I just moved to Florida. I've lived in Arizona all my life, so beaches are something new for me. Should I worry if sand gets into my vagina? What should I do? Is this a serious question? If you want, rinse it with clean water, but it will eventually come out anyway. It's serious. Maybe it sounds silly, but I've never been to the beach before. I recently went swimming for the first time and got really anxious. Sometimes my brain likes to mess with me. It's always been interesting. How do people come to such professions? I was a humanities person, but then I got bored, and I switched to biology/chemistry, hoping to eventually become something like a pharmacologist. Of course, I never even thought about going into medicine, but then I decided to go for it, thinking I'd either be a pediatrician or a dermatologist. I promised my husband I wouldn't even consider surgery or gynecology. But then I went for a rotation in obstetrics/gynecology and realized that as a thrill seeker, that's exactly what I needed. I remember once running around the hospital at 2 in the morning, covered in bloody amniotic fluid, and thinking, damn, I'm actually here. In middle school, and, I think, high school too, I had my period twice a month. When this came up, my stubborn parents refused to take me to a Western doctor and took me to some Chinese healer. I don't know how, but he helped me. Everything fell into place. I still have no explanation for how it happened. Maybe you do? What was wrong with me? I'm not OP, but I can answer. At that age, it's completely normal. Do you go to another gynecologist for a general smear test? Or can you do such things yourself? I'm asking seriously. I understand that dentists go to other dentists to get fillings done, but in your case, could it be different? I go to another gynecologist. She also performed my cesarean section when I gave birth to my son. I'm a guy who's considering retraining as an obstetrician gynecologist. Do you think it's harder for guys in this field? It seems to me that women might find it easier to attract patients. It all depends on where you live and who you work with. Some ethnic groups clearly prefer female gynecologists, but I haven't noticed men being discriminated against. It's always good to have a few guys in the mix to balance things out. Actually, many men are very compassionate, and they make excellent obstetricians because a guy will never say, "Oh, I've been through this. What are you complaining about? It's not that painful." How big are your student loans? How much do you earn? You should post this in the thread "I'm married to a gynecologist and pay all her bills. Ask me anything." Actually, the numbers are constantly changing. I'm constantly paying off my student loans, and my earnings vary because my salary depends on my productivity. When you conduct an examination, do you try to distract patients with conversation? I can't figure out what's more awkward, complete silence during the examination or when the doctor tries to engage me in conversation. If I see that a patient is very nervous, I ask if she'd like to talk. Usually, they decline my offer and stay glued to their smartphone the whole time. Sometimes I try not to say too much so as not to accidentally distract them from writing another tweet. I'm 30. I've never been to a gynecologist in my entire adult life. I've only been to a family doctor a couple of times. I never get sick. Do you think I should go for a checkup? I don't have any problems. Just go for a smear test. Some diseases, like cervical dysplasia, which in turn leads to cervical cancer, usually progress completely symptom-free. My youngest patient with cervical cancer was 27, but precancer can occur much earlier. My wife worked as an obstetrician gynecologist for several years, and I've heard so many horrors from her. Do you think it's possible to get used to the smell of bacterial vaginosis? Impossible. Can you imagine how it was for me working while pregnant, constantly feeling nauseous and smelling any odor from a mile away? I could diagnose vaginosis from across the room as soon as the patient opened the door. Are you married? What does your husband think about your job? I'm married to a wonderful man who has no connection to medicine. He doesn't really think anything specific, just happy that I earn more money than the average young wife. Do you think if you switched professions, your feelings towards him would change? No, Because, in terms of ethics and morals, my husband is much more perfect than I am. And all male gynecologists just see it as a job. Is it normal for my periods to always be different, with varying intervals and amounts of discharge? If the cycles range from 21 to 35 days, counting from the first day of one period to the first day of the next, and they last from 3 to 7 days, then they are considered normal. So, don't expect them to occur at the same time every month. If you frequently exceed these parameters, it's best to see a doctor to make sure everything is okay. Thanks for watching, and write in the comments so that you would like to ask an unusual gynecologist. And also, don't forget to watch our other videos.